There are places in this world where dreams do not arrive shining. They come buried, hidden beneath frozen ground, swallowed by mud, locked under layers of stone that do not give easily and never give freely. In those places, hope is not something you wait for. It is something you chase with engines screaming in the cold, with hands torn raw by labor, with bodies so exhausted they forget what rest feels like. Dig, sweat, and repeat begins in that kind of world, a world where every sunrise is a challenge, every breakdown feels like a threat, and every ounce of gold comes with a cost measured far beyond money. Because this is not just a story about mining, it is a story about endurance, about obsession, about people who have chosen a life where the difference between triumph and failure can be measured in a single cut of earth, a single mechanical failure, a single bad decision made under pressure. Out here, nothing is guaranteed. Not the weather, not the machinery, not the ground beneath your feet. And yet, every day, they return to the same dirt with the same impossible belief that this time, somewhere beneath the weight of all that struggle, the earth will finally say yes, and that is what makes this world so compelling. Not the gold itself, but the human need behind it. The need to prove that sacrifice means something, that the years invested, the money risked, the relationship strained, the sleepless nights and endless repairs, all of it can still lead to something worth holding in your hand. In the gold fields, fortune is never just found. It is hunted, fought for, and sometimes dragged out of the ground by pure will alone. By the time this chapter unfolds, the rhythm of the season is already wearing on everyone. The romance of the gold rush, the grand idea, the adventure, the promise of wealth has long since been stripped away. What remains is the reality, the mud, the noise, the relentless, punishing repetition. Excavators claw into the earth hour after hour. Rock trucks grind across uneven ground. Conveyors rattle and groan under impossible loads. Wash plants thunder like industrial heartbeat, separating hope from dirt one bucket at a time. And behind every machine is a crew holding the entire operation together by grit and routine. Men and women who know that gold mining is not won in a single glorious moment. It is won in repetition, in discipline, in getting up before the body is ready and pushing through long after the mind begins to drift toward doubt. There is nothing clean about it, nothing easy. Every victory here is dirty, delayed, and earned in fragments. But the deeper truth is that each mine site is more than an operation. It is a gamble made visible. Fuel bills, equipment payments, wages, repairs, every decision carries weight. Every day the ground fails to produce, the pressure builds. Not quietly, either. It presses in from every direction. From investors, from family, from the season itself. Always moving forward, always shortening the window left to make it all worthwhile. Out here, the clock is as dangerous as the terrain. Time can bury a crew just as surely as bad ground. That is why the work becomes personal. It is no longer just about hitting a target. It becomes about identity, pride, legacy, the need to stand in front of the gold room at the end of the week and know that all the pain led somewhere. For some, it is about proving they still have what it takes. For others, it is about justifying the years they have already given to a life that asks for everything and promises nothing. And that tension lives underneath every moment, even the quiet ones, especially the quiet ones, because in gold mining, silence is rarely peace. More often, it is anticipation, the uneasy pause before the next setback, the next storm, the next mechanical failure, the next moment when the dream has to survive another test. As the episode pushes forward, the strain begins to show in every corner of the operation. The work does not slow down. If anything, it becomes more brutal. The ground is stubborn, the conditions unforgiving, and the margin for error feels thinner with every passing hour. A single weak point in the chain, a jammed conveyor, a failing engine, a torn hose, a miscalculation can ripple outward into a full-blown crisis. In a place where time is money and downtime feels like blood loss, even the smallest problem arrives with enormous weight. And the truth is, by this stage in the season, nobody is working fresh anymore. Everyone is carrying fatigue, not the kind that disappears after a night's sleep, but the deeper kind, the kind that sits in your bones, clouds your judgment, shortens your temper, and turns every unexpected problem into something harder to absorb. People start speaking in sharper tones. Patience frays. Decisions become more desperate, more immediate, because there is no luxury left for hesitation. That is where the real drama of dig, sweat, and repeat begins to reveal itself. Not in some dramatic explosion, but in the slow accumulation of pressure. One obstacle, then another, then another. A machine goes down when it cannot afford to. The pater does not deliver what the crew hoped it would. The hours stretch longer. The calculations grow uglier. Suddenly, the season is no longer something being built, it is something being defended. And perhaps the most punishing part of all is how invisible the reward can feel. They move thousands upon thousands of tons of earth, and for long stretches, there is almost nothing to show for it except noise, fuel consumption, and exhaustion. That is the emotional cruelty of gold mining. The work is immediate, but the payoff is delayed. The effort is obvious, but the reward remains hidden. You can do everything right and still come up short. You can push beyond your limit and still watch the scales disappoint you. So they keep moving. They have to, because stopping is its own kind of defeat. Every shovel of dirt, every roaring pass of the excavator bucket, every panicked repair in the middle of a freezing shift becomes part of a larger act of faith. They are betting that somewhere beneath all this resistance, the ground will eventually reveal enough gold to justify the damage. But faith, under pressure, becomes fragile, and as setbacks pile higher, a darker possibility begins to settle over everything. What if all this labor still ain't enough? Then comes the moment when strain can no longer be hidden behind routine. The operation reaches that dangerous edge where everyone knows the next move matters more than the last 10 combined. This is the turning point, the hour when the crew is forced to decide whether to hold back and protect what remains, or push harder and risk everything on one more shot at redemption. And out here, that choice is never theoretical. It is loud. It is muddy. It is made under pressure, surrounded by noise and uncertainty. The machines are already tired. The crew is already stretched thin. The site itself feels like it has been fighting back all season. Yet still, they lean in, because miners understand something most people never have to confront. Sometimes survival requires one final push at the exact moment when your strength is running out. So they dig deeper. They run harder. Repairs are made faster, maybe rougher, but they are made. Conversations become shorter. I stay fixed on the cut, on the sluice, on the flow of material moving through the plant. Every second feels loaded. Every sound from the machinery carries tension. A rattle that should not be there. A delay that lasts too long. A silence that feels wrong. It is the kind of sequence where no one wants to speak too early, because hope itself has become dangerous. And then, slowly, the episode begins to shift. Not because the work gets easier, not because the risk disappears, but because after all the punishment, after all the repetition, after all the moments that seem to drain belief from the operation, there comes that rare and electric feeling that the ground might finally be giving something back. It begins almost quietly, a hint, a sign, enough to make people pay attention, enough to wake something back up inside the crew. This is why they endure. This is why they come back. For this exact emotional swing from doubt to possibility, from near defeat to the sudden, almost disorienting rush of momentum. In that moment, the mud doesn't feel quite as heavy. The noise becomes almost musical. Fatigue steps aside, just for a second, because adrenaline has taken its place. And when the gold finally appears, whether in flakes, in weight, in the kind of total that changes the mood of an entire camp, it lands with far more force than the number itself. Because it is not only gold, it is confirmation, proof that the suffering was not random, proof that effort, even after being punished again and again, can still find its answer. It is a reminder that the line between failure and breakthrough is sometimes impossibly thin, but that breakthrough does not erase the struggle, it gives it meaning. And that may be even more powerful. As the dust begins to settle, dig, Sweat and repeat leaves behind more than the image of gold on a scale. It leaves the human aftermath of the chase, the tired faces, the silence after the machinery stops, the weight of a day, or a week, or an entire season carried in the posture of people who know exactly what it took to get here. Out in the gold fields, celebration is rarely loud for long. There is too much realism for that, too much memory, too many scars left by all the times the dream almost slipped away. Because even when the gold count comes in strong, nobody here mistakes success for safety. They know better. They know that one good cleanup does not erase the bills. One breakthrough does not guarantee the next. Tomorrow, the machines will need fuel again. The ground will still have to be opened. The weather will still threaten. Time will still be running out. This life does not allow anyone to stay in victory for very long. And that is what gives the episode its emotional power. It understands that the real story is not simply whether gold was found. It is what people are willing to become in order to keep looking for it. The patience they lose, the strength they discover, the doubt they swallow, the hope they protect, even when logic tells them to let it go. These miners are not just battling the earth. They are battling exhaustion, risk, pride, fear, and the quiet voice that asks, again and again, whether any of this is worth it. Somewhere along the way, that question becomes the heartbeat of the whole story, and maybe the answer is not in the gold alone. Maybe it is in the refusal to quit, in the decision to return to the cut after a bad day, in the stubborn courage to repair one more machine, move one more pile of dirt, trust one more cleanup. Because for people living this life, gold is never only metal. It is validation, survival, a reason to believe that sacrifice can still lead somewhere brighter. So when the episode ends, what stays with us is not just the reward. It is the repetition, the cycle that defines this world. Dig, sweat, repeat. 3 simple words, but together they describe a life built on endurance and risk, on hope and punishment, on the kind of obsession that keeps people reaching into the earth no matter how many times it resists them. And maybe that is the final truth buried inside this story. The gold matters. Yes, but it is the pursuit that reveals who they really are. Because out here, in the noise and mud and cold, dreams do not come easy. They come one hard-earned ounce at a time.